This has been an unforgettable week in the lives of many Queenslanders, including the Premier Anna Bligh. She's with us tonight live from the Emergency Management Headquarters in Brisbane. Premier, thanks once again for being with this program. If we can start with the Lockyer Valley, you've seen the devastation there firsthand today. Has that prompted you to take any additional actions?
Well, good evening, Leigh. Look, seeing the Lockyer Valley firsthand, none of the images that people have been seeing on their screens, none of the words that have been written about it can really capture the sort of devastation and the terror of the event that people in that valley lived through. And it's clear that they're in, a state of shock and disbelief. So there's a lot of issues to work through there. We came across a couple of issues that need to be fixed very quickly. The school is the community centre, and we've got to get that back as a school. So there's a few things we'll do there. But Leigh, we've got people in grief and shock and all across Queensland. It is a massive recovery effort, and everyone sees the infrastructure and the big industries, but this is at its heart a people problem, and we've got to work at every single level to get these towns, these families back on their feet.
On that exact point about people, have you been able to get grief counsellors into those really badly affected regions yet? And if so, are the people there availing themselves of that service?
We have, at the moment, we are operating 50 evacuation centres across Queensland. And in every one of those centres, Lifeline and in some cases Queensland Health, where necessary, are providing counselling for people. In the Lockyer Valley, we have 8 teams of 5 specialist counsellors each, including people who specialise in counselling with children, because what the Lockyer Valley went through was such an intense and traumatic event. So yes, counselling is going to be part, I think, of the long-term recovery, but those teams in the Lockyer Valley only got in there yesterday, so there's a long road ahead.
Do you think people are taking care of their mental health? Because I imagine if you're confronted with a disaster like this, you probably think, oh, I just need to clean everything up. Are they looking after themselves, do you think?
I think people are doing the best they can to just get on with the job and roll up their sleeves and try to get rid of the terrible mess. But there's no doubt that there will be various phases of this. People will get their houses clean, but then they'll realise that there's still a lot of structural work and it's going to take months. And there are things they've lost that they'll never be able to replace. And so grief and shock and I think anger and all sorts of strong emotions are going to be played out across Queensland in homes and towns and communities for many months to come, and we've all got to be patient with that. People who have lost everything are going to need us to understand what they're going through, yeah, I do think it's going to take all of us a while for the reality to sink in. It's happened so fast on such a vast scale. We're still coming to terms with it.
If I can ask some questions about some of the things that lie ahead, will the state government bridge the gap financially for people who have no insurance or are underinsured?
Leigh, that's one of the roles of the Premier's relief appeal. Those people who, for whatever reason, whether it's a problem with their insurance or, they might have a particular problem with, let's say, a disability, or everybody will have circumstances that are unique to them or their family. And the relief appeal that we've been raising money for will go directly to individuals and to families. None of it will be spent on roads or railways. That's the job of government. We already, between the state and federal government, offer a series of relief payments, and they do provide on a means-tested basis for people to access funds for getting new appliances, as well as some of the structural damage to their home. But it doesn't fix everything. So yes, the gap then needs to be filled by things like the relief appeal.
On the question of insurance, do you think that there's work to be done that could be led from a government level with insurance companies and local councils and consumer groups to try to find a way to deal with this issue of why so many people can't get floods coverage?
When you see a flood of the scale that we have just seen affecting 3/4 of our state, 86 towns either flooded or isolated by them, I think it's a very good question. It's hard to believe that this is the best system that we can come up with. Many of the people who have been affected are people who have paid their home insurance, for 20 or 30 or 40 years, only to find that either they didn't have flood coverage or the flood coverage they had didn't fit the flood that they've experienced. And As I said, I've been a bit busy this week to redesign that part of the system, but I do think that these are good questions that we need to ask ourselves as a nation. Is this the best way that we can protect ourselves in a country that has these extreme events from time to time?
So is that something that going forward you'll be looking at addressing at a government level, trying to take some leadership on that issue?
Leigh, there'll be opportunities for us to talk about these things further down the track. Today, it was only late this afternoon that we were confident that we would not be evacuating the town of Gundawindi. So we are still flying food supplies into the suburbs of Brisbane, getting fresh water by truck out into the towns of the Lockyer Valley. So we're still very much in responding to this. There are many policy issues, though, that will confront us, and we'll systematically work our way through them.
Let me just ask one more question. I understand your point about dealing with the immediate threat, but I just wanted you to respond to something that the Brisbane Lord Mayor Campbell Newman said yesterday, which was that he called for a judicial-style inquiry along the lines of the Royal Commission into the Victorian bushfires in 2009. Is that something that you'd support?
Well, I think we all want to have a better understanding of all of the circumstances around this event. Not only a really good, thorough look at what did we do well, where could we have done better, where were the mistakes made, but I think particularly around the Toowoomba event, I think we need to have a very intense look at how that happened, whether we could have had better warnings, what might have been better managed. So we'll certainly be looking at those questions. The form in which that inquiry takes is something we'll give some thought to in the coming week. But right now, we're putting people first. We've got a massive task to do here, keeping people safe and cleaning up our capital city and towns all around Queensland.
So in the next 48 hours, what then are your immediate priorities?
The immediate priorities in the next 48 hours are really the basics. They are clean water, electricity reconnection, and opening up as many major roads as we can. This evening we've opened up the Ipswich motorway and Moggill Road. They are big arterial important roads in the city, and that'll start to see more normal movement around the city. The Rockhampton highway blockage was unblocked this afternoon. The floodwaters went down enough to open that highway, and that's the first time that we've been able to get supplies on the Bruce Highway into towns like Mackay, Townsville and Cairns. They've been getting supplied with food by army drops for days and days. So these are important milestones in the recovery as we get those basics done. So we're not going to take our eye off the ball in terms of water, food, electricity and getting our roads and transport system operational again. That has to be our number one priority. When
you were with me on Wednesday night, I asked you about sewage and whether you thought that might be a problem, and I think you said it would depend what happened with the floods. We haven't heard anything about that. Is that all running smoothly? Here in the Brisbane and Ipswich area, yes, that fortunately to date has not been an issue. I have to say it has been an issue in some of the towns that have experienced floods in the last 2 weeks, but even in those towns where it had been a problem, that has now been fixed. So that's obviously one of the things you move and fix very quickly. But these are all the components of a major event like this. Anna Bligh, thank you very much for your availability this week, and best of luck with what lies ahead. Thank you, and thank you for your efforts to make sure that people knew what was happening up here. You're welcome.